Fanfiction Writing 101. Before we get started, just, objectives, because we're both education teachers. I'm a librarian and she is an English and yearbook teacher. So this is just the way we work, and I apologize for nothing. So our objective for today is to provide some introduction into the world of fan fiction writing and giving you guys some tips on how to better write your fan fictions. We do have an advanced course tomorrow where I'm going to be discussing a little bit more about how to increase your reach and how to improve some of your writing tips. So it is they do mesh together. So if you attend this one, you'll get even further tips of what I'm offering here into tomorrow's panel as well. Just general rules, of course, please be mindful of everyone that's here. Feel free to ask any questions. We're here to answer them as best as we can. Because this is a family-friendly panel, we're gonna try to refrain from discussing things that are beyond PG-13. I'm certain I don't see children. So for the most part, if a word slips here or there, it is what it is. We are talking about fan fiction. But of course, please ask any questions as they come up. So some general introductions. I am KR Luna.
And I am Jay Wolbas.
And we are co-authors, typically for the Plants fandom, and then I also write for the Helliverse. So just be prepared, all of our examples are from our fan fiction, so you're going to see mostly Plants from Voltron, and then you're also going to see a lot of Radio Apple and Helliverse from me, because that's what I mainly write. But we are co-authors. We are also co-authors for an original novel that is hopefully coming out this winter. So if you do follow us on our socials, I do have QR codes. Please follow us. It is a fantasy series that is expected to be 10 books long. So, please, we've been working on it for 8 years, I'm begging. But yes, these are all of our fan fictions that you guys see up here. I do like to create pretty covers. If you do come to our advanced course, I will tell you how I make said pretty covers. So please, again, advertisement for my 11:30 p.m. Panel for tomorrow, because that's where I'm going to discuss those kind of things. So, you have an idea. Congratulations. Welcome to fan fiction. As most of us in fandom come to learn, it is a beautiful little space that we have created for ourselves, because we take our favorite characters and we do whatever we want with them. And that is my favorite part of fan fiction writing. We've been writing fan fiction since what? We're reaching 10 years now?
Yes.
Yes. But I've been writing fan fiction since 2005. I started off with some Inuyasha and Ranma 1/2 fan fiction. Heck yeah. Wrote some Naruto back in my day. So I've been at this game for a bit. But I am mostly known for Helliverse and for Voltron. So, and it is because we adore fan fictions and fan fiction writing. So again, you have an idea. Congratulations. Welcome to the world of fan fiction writing. We're first going to discuss inspiration. So most of the time when you are fan fiction writing, you are trying to figure out what inspires you to write. And there's several places where inspiration kind of hits. The first, of course, is that you can take from real life experiences. Some of us like to explore through fan fiction writing about our trauma, our sexual exploration, romance, things like that. I will say that thank you to fan fiction writing is where I was able to figure out my sexuality. So it's thanks to fan fiction and the exploration of fan fiction that I was able to figure out what my sexuality was over these past 20 years I've been doing this. So again, fan fiction can lead to those kind of things as well. It's a great place to explore and play with your favorite characters and still kind of learn stuff about yourself. Of course, then you are just a fan of the canon verse and you want to write about your canon verse, so write about your canon verse, and that's what you do. Or, as a very popular thing to do, is alternative universes, where you take your favorite characters and you throw them somewhere else. Your two typical AUs are if you take it into another media. So I have a fan fiction for Radio Apple that isn't Wicked. I'm very proud of it. It's what I do. But then you can also go into a different genre. You're like, hey, I'm just going to make a fantasy. And the show itself has nothing to do with fantasy. Of course, other reasons why is you want to do a deeper dive of your favorite characters, setting exploration, music, art, other artists' art inspires you to write something, your favorite headcanons of those characters, because they should kiss. Right? That's typically the number one reason why we're all here. They should just kiss, and we're gonna make them. And then my personal favorite, because I have insomnia and I can't go to sleep until this idea that I had at 2 a.m. is on paper. That's my number one inspiration for writing fan fiction. So now you have an idea. Great job. Now it's time to write. Wrong. It's time to plan. You should, I will say, as a writer for many, many, many years, Some form of planning is required before you start putting pen to paper, because if you just go at it, you will suffer empty page syndrome, and that is the last thing you want, is to look at an empty page and be like, what are words? You don't want that. So of course, planning and researching is probably your best friend in the planning process of your fan fiction. I personally am a big pusher for research. Shocking, I am a librarian. So, yeah, thank you. So obviously researching and finding yourself as an author is my number one thing that you need to do. So not just researching your characters and your setting and your canon verse, no. Researching yourself as an author is your number one step. Because if you don't know what your voice is, then you're never going to be able to carry your story. So what I always recommend when you're researching like who you are as an author is figuring out what your preferred genres are. I am a huge fan of rom-coms. I love fantasy as well, and I've started dabbling a lot in horror in the last year, and apparently I'm good at it, so great. You could not make me write sci-fi to save my life. Never gonna happen, because I know that that's not my voice. I love sci-fi, I watch a lot of sci-fi, I read a lot of sci-fi, but I cannot write sci-fi to save my life. Figuring out how your voice you want it to be, like how you want to project what you're saying and what kind of flow and verbiage you have within you. My biggest thing is always read. A good writer reads. So always read stuff that comes from that fandom. So reading other creators' fan fictions or reading stories within that genre. So I read a lot of rom-coms because that's what I love writing. I read a lot of fantasy because that's what I love writing. And it's so that I can tell the difference in voice. One of the nicer comments that I received recently, because I released my horror fic, but then I also released a rom-com, they're like, I love how your voice sounds different in the genre, but it fits that genre. It's because I've been practicing my voice for 20 years. So I know how to switch it up depending on what I'm writing. After that, of course, you want to research your characters, because for the most part, what we're doing is focusing on our favorite characters and writing our favorite characters. So you want to research your favorite characters. Learn how they speak. It actually makes a very big difference if you learn how your character speaks. What I typically do is when I'm ready to start writing a fan fiction is I rewatch my show, except this time I rewatch it with an analysis mind. And I start picking up what are their nuances, what are their slang, what is the little twerks within their body language that they use, so that then I can describe it appropriately within my fan fiction. Maybe jotting down notes, like, oh, they did this sway, so then how would I describe that sway? And then kind of like jot it down to yourself. Or, oh, they use this phrase a lot, or they say with this twang, and figuring it out. Like one of the things I'm recently researching now is I'm revisiting Angel Dust from Has Been Hotel, because I'm trying to pick up his like Brooklyn accent. So I'm trying to figure out where I'm putting that apostrophe versus writing the whole word out. So I'm rewatching the show just to figure out how he speaks and where his slang comes from. Another thing, of course, is figuring out what drives them. What are their biases? What are their preferred meals? What's their culture? How do they interact with certain characters versus how they interact with other characters? So just truly analyzing your characters and learning them like from top to bottom is your best, because especially if you're going to write an AU, you want to get that character right within an AU, because the last thing you want to hear is, wow, that didn't sound like that character at all. So you really want to try to analyze and understand your character outside of the setting so that you can figure out how to write them appropriately. Of course, also research your setting, because if you are writing in canon or in an alternative universe, you want to know what the heck you're putting out there. With our Clans AU, we did it in a modern setting, and it was in Orlando, so it was just a lot of like Orlando streets and writing down Orlando language and putting it down into the fanfiction.
Thankfully, we lived there for...
Yeah, we both lived here for a while. We don't live here anymore, but we lived here for a bit. But then we also have written stories in fantasy settings, so figuring out what is the government of this fantasy setting, what is the magic rules of this setting, and learning how those nuances make the story flow better. Of course, if you are writing in canon, once again, watch the show again, figure out what the rules of the canon verse is. After that, what you're really going to want to do too is start researching any specific elements within your story that you might want to research a little bit more. One of our most popular Clans fan fictions is a Veterans AU, where one of the characters is a veteran coming from war, and he does suffer from PTSD throughout the entire fan fiction. So we did a lot of research into how PTSD presents for a military veteran, and how it could affect them negatively and positively within their lives. So that's because we wanted to be respectful even within our own fan fiction. So that's a specific element we went out and we did some research on. For my Helliverse, I'm doing a lot of biblical lore because I'm going to start writing Lucifer's brothers, and they're not characters within the show, but I still kind of want it to tie into original biblical lore. So I'm in the process of doing a lot of research on that because I want to get those kind of characters right for the story that I'm writing. Anything before we keep going? You're done?
I would say if you are going to start researching something like PTSD, be very mindful of your own triggers.
Yes, please.
That is 100% is your mental safety is the most important thing when it comes to this.
Yes, and there's a whole slide on tags, because tags are important. Pre-planning. So now you've done a lot of your research and you want to start pre-planning. Do you want to go over the thing you were talking about?
So, pre-planning is great. I am not a planner. I am a pantser. I just write, and she hates it.
I do. I despise it.
And there's nothing wrong with being a pantser. Sometimes the best thing to do is just to start writing and get that idea down on paper. Does that lead to a lot of plot holes? Yes.
That's why I'm the plot hole fixer. But with pre-planning can be extremely important, especially if you're writing a very long formatted fan fiction. And of course, there's various options of what you can do with pre-planning. I'm an outliner for the most part. I just like to outline my fan fiction and then kind of follow it like almost like a checklist. Some people I've met actually like to draw and sketch their ideas and then look back at their sketches as they're writing their fan fiction. Random journaling has worked for others. We do this a lot where most of our pre-planning is just us talking with one another because we're co-authors. And then I'm also on a bunch of Discord servers where I might discuss some ideas with some of my friends online and then kind of piggyback off that. Some people do role-playing with a friend and then the role-playing becomes a fan fiction. So that's another form of pre-planning. Old school webbing, just like you did in high school and middle school, that works for people. So they use the webbing concept and they create a plots from there, and that works for them. Basic note taking, this one's my favorite in the sense of that idea came to you at the red light, and then now you need to write that thing down. So then you pull over to the parking lot, open up my note tab on my phone, write down my note, and then get back on the road. Please don't write while you're driving. Trust me. And then, of course, my favorite one is obsessively thinking about my idea again and again until I can't eat or sleep. That happens to me daily.
That's why there's 10 books in the series.
That's why there's 10 books in the series. These are some examples of some things that people have used for researching and pre-planning. So over here is a character development sheet that I've found online that I've actually used with students before, and it helps you break apart the different nuances of your character. This might be a good thing to also hold with you as you're analyzing a character and rewatching the show and kind of filling in the blanks as you find them. The one in the middle is actually how I outline. That's from a fan fiction that I'm working on right now. I will make certain notes and then I kind of go in chronological order of how I want the story to be written, but then like, as you can see, like I have like divots because those are like little scenes that are gonna be broken apart in the middle. And this one especially, I'm doing a collaboration with 2 artists for this. It's for an event. So I needed to write the outline as much as I can so that the artist can pick the scenes that they wanna write before I even write the fan fiction because we have similar deadlines. So the outline is not only useful for me, it was useful for the 2 artists that I'm working with. And then the one at the very end is actually from our novel series. These are just like character sheets that I created in our notebook, where I just write down like their basic information. What is their height? What is their weight? What do they look like? So that anytime we're writing the story, if we're like, oh man, what were they wearing in that chapter? Boop, I have it in my notes. So that we can always go back. All right, any questions on pre-planning before we move on? No? Cool. So now you're ready to write. It's time to tackle that beast that is the writing, and it is by far one of the hardest steps in the entire process. My first advice to everyone is literally just write. Yes, your first draft will be trash. There is no way around it. If you think that you're going to get perfection the first time, you are going to suffer as a writer for the remainder of your writing career. Your first draft will be trash. But trust me, it is easier to edit trash than it is to edit nothing.
Yep.
So please, 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 my first advice to you is just try writing, okay? You don't want to fall in what we call empty page syndrome, which is where you're just staring at an empty page, staring at it, and nothing happens and 2 hours of time have passed. Because that's where your brain kind of gets stuck and the idea is never gonna come out. A lot of people, to avoid this, they do like the outline that I did, because then it's not empty anymore. You already kind of generally have ideas of where you want to go. Or some people, just like her, just start going. And then in the editing process is where you fine tune it and make it where you need it to be. One of the tips that I've started using within the last year is sprinting. Does anybody here know what sprinting is? Amazing. So sprinting is where you put yourself on a 15-minute, 20-minute, 30-minute timer, and you try to see how many words you can write within that time frame. If you are in any kind of online servers and Discord with your fandom, a lot of the servers now will include a bot that allows you to do sprinting, and you actually get to sprint with other writers. So I'm on a server where I sprint with others. It's about 5 of us. We try to meet once a week at 9 o'clock, and we all get together and we try to do 2 to 3 sprints at a time. And we don't do it as a competition. We do it to just encourage each other. And then we pause and we share little snippets of what we shared. And then our goal is only to see if our word count can get better with each time, and to support one another. So sprinting is a really good idea because it just kind of helps you focus. And if you are able to do sprinting with a group of people, they kind of encourage you to do better and better and better. And what's really good about sprinting, especially if you do it on like Discord with the bot, it actually gives you your word per minute rate, which is really cool to have. I've noticed my word per minute rate is getting better because I keep doing sprinting, and now I'm averaging about 600 to 800 words within a 15-minute span. So it's getting much better. And I have friends who started with like only 52 words per 15 minutes, and now they're down up to 200, 300. So as the more you do it, it kind of does help you. Just get used to forcing yourself to write and not obsess over like, oh, where are the mistakes? It's just write. Of course, setting goals for yourself is a good one. Be mindful with your goals. Don't be like, I'm gonna write every day, and if I don't write, I didn't meet a goal. It's fine. I know it's painful to not write on every single day, but it's okay to skip a day. Give yourself some more mindful goals. My goals for myself is just my word count. I like to see that every time I do sit down and write, how many words can I get through? My goal is about 1,500 to 2,000 anytime I do sit and write. And then I chart it and figure out how many words I was able to get during that session. But I don't put myself, and I don't force myself that I have to write every single day, because I know that for me, I'm a parent, I have a job, it's not reasonable, you know? So every time I sit, that's my goal. Of course, don't get defeated if you can't write every day. It is okay, take your breaks. This is for fun, so keep it fun. Don't do anything if you aren't writing, or if you find yourself in a place where writing is becoming a little difficult, always go back to reading. So that's how I goal myself. Like, oh man, this month has been horrible for writing. That's fine. I'm gonna concentrate a little bit more on reading. Because as you read, eventually that writing bug kind of comes back. And in the end, the best way to become a better writer is to be a good reader. And of course, save your document. I don't trust the cloud. The cloud erased 3 paragraphs for me 2 days ago. So save your document, please. Back in college, when I first started writing, the blue screen of death got me and erased an entire 50-page fan fiction. Please save your document. Thank you. That's my big one. Now, of course, when you are writing, these are some of like the things to keep in mind as you are getting ready to write. The first one is picking your POV, your point of view. And I'm gonna go a little further into what different points of view are in the next few slides. But learning and sticking to your POV is gonna really help you, because if you go from first to second to first to first to second to first, and you don't even realize you're doing it from paragraph to paragraph, that's when you kind of lose your flow. So figuring out your point of view is very important. Consider your strengths as a writer and review your areas that need improvement. A good kind of beginner question to ask yourself is, are you stronger in the narrative format, or are you stronger in writing dialogue? What I've come to realize is a lot of people who come out of role-playing going into fan fiction writing tend to be stronger in dialogue, while those who are coming in as like frequent readers and all they did was really read and they didn't really write and this is their first time writing tend to be better at narratives and then forget how people talk when you get into the dialogue part. So that's a kind of a good place to check yourself first. Are you stronger at dialogue or narrative? And then continue doing better with whatever you're good at, and then try to do a little bit more research on the area you're not so good at. Also, figure out your tone. Angst, fluff, sexy stuff, mixed stuff, like figure out what your general tone is for your fan fiction and stick to that tone as best as you can. Of course, they can intermix. as much as you need. One of our favorite tropes that a lot of our readers call us out for is that they know when a certain part of the fan fiction is getting really soft and fluffy and beautiful and oh my gosh, but there's still 10 chapters left in the fan fiction. Yes, that means the big angst is coming. We are prepping you for that. We got to give you too much happy before I give you the really big sad.
If everyone's happy, something horrible is about to happen.
And there's still 10 chapters left. Something bad's about to happen. And of course, figuring out your beginning, middle, and end. This specific little part at the bottom is a call out to a lot of my Radio Apple people. So yes, I do understand that that one song inspired that one amazing epic scene in your head to write this whole fan fiction, but you still have to remember how to get there and how to end it. It's not just about the one scene. So please, please, please start planning your beginning, middle, and end to get to that scene that inspired this entire fan fiction. One of the good things that I did early when I started writing fan fiction was I actually went back to old school elementary plot diagram whenever I got really stuck on my beginning, middle, and end. Because you might be surprised how this actually can still help you. So if that one scene that you saw in your head is the reason why you're having this fan fiction, well, where does it fit in the chart? Is that your climax? Is it your ending? And then from there, it actually helps you kind of figure out where to tie it all together. So an old school plot diagram can actually be very helpful, especially if you're struggling with that middle bit. A lot of writers say that the beginning and the ending tends to be their easiest part, and then that one moment that they really wanted tends to be their easy part, but it's the connection of it all that they struggle with. And literally going back to old school plot diagram helps so much because you can visually see where you have your rising action, where you have your climax, and where you're going back into your ending. And it kind of really breaks it apart for you in a visual way that maybe an outline might not. So some narrative tips, like I said, we were going to discuss a little bit of POV. So there are, of course, I put POC, that one. Oh, here we go. So of course, there are 3 POVs. You have first person point of view, which is where you're using your eyes and knees. I will say for fan fiction writing, most people try to avoid first person point of view. It's not unheard of. And I do think that there is a place for it. I've read some really, really good fan fictions that were written like journal entries. I'm actually in the middle of writing one that it reads like a transcript of an interview. So that's going to have a little bit more of a first person point of view feel to it. So there is a place for it, but I do know first person tends to be pretty uncommon. Second point of view is the hardest one to write. That's actually the one area I still struggle to write. But when you find a good second point of view fan fiction, it's typically the best fan fiction you're going to read because it is not easy to write. So the person who dares to do it is very, very confident. And then of course, third person point of view, this one has 2, and this is the most common one. So your limited is where you're still kind of focusing mostly on just one character. So even though you're writing in third person point of view, you're still really only focusing on this pair of characters, like what they're doing and their nuances, and really still truly only going into their head. While the other one, you get into everybody's head, you get to see how everyone's doing, and then you can write whatever the heck is going on, like if you were watching a television show. When you are writing, pay attention to your purpose for writing. One of the most common things that I see, especially when you're writing really long form, when you start going into your multi-chapter fan fiction, is that the author tends to lose their purpose. Somewhere along chapter 25, suddenly the reason why I started reading this fan fiction is now long gone, and we've completely lost the focus and purpose of the fan fiction. And then you see your numbers dropping because what engaged your readers, what got them to start reading, you've kind of lost it. I know one of the hardest things to do, especially in fan fiction writing, is that when you start getting a little bit of feedback, you start getting your comments and your kudos, you're like, I don't want this fan fiction to end. But sometimes you have to face the facts. If you don't end it in an appropriate way, if you don't keep the flow going in your fan fiction, you will lose those people that you just gained. So making sure that you know what your purpose for your fan fiction is, so that then the story is good from beginning, middle to end, and you keep the audience that you have received. Of course, also create your setting. And one of the big things about creating your setting is understanding that your setting is not just what is physically around the person, but also the emotional setting of your characters. For the most part, especially in fan fiction, we're here to adore the characters that we love and to play with them. So we want to know what's going on within them. So making sure that you're creating the setting of emotions and tension, and that you're not only rising, not just discussing what's going on in the space, but also discussing what's going on internally for those characters. Be mindful, of course, of when and where to inform your reader of things. I love literary devices. I am a huge fan of them. My favorite one is foreshadowing. I use foreshadowing far too much. I'm that person who foreshadows things in chapter 1 that you won't find out until chapter 10, and then when we get to chapter 10, I go, I told you so, and then they start yelling at me like, wow, I saw all the clues and I chose to ignore them. I was like, right. Yes, foreshadowing is my favorite thing to do. And of course, like metaphors and imagery and simile, all of that fun stuff we learned in English class. So use them. They can make your story far, far, far better. Anything you want to add to that?
No, that was good.
Of course, if when you're ready, if you get stuck on something, again, go read. Reading is your best friend when it comes to being a writer. If you get stuck, go read things. Go read your favorite fan fiction again, but maybe this time look at it and analyze it and break it apart. A really good thing to do too is if you end up meeting other writers within the space, talk to those writer friends and see how they break apart fan fictions and how they kind of get out of their stuff rep too. Because everybody does different things to get out of that place. Also double check your notes, consistently going back to your pre-planning and making sure that you're following it. But it is okay to steer away from your outline. Sometimes you just gotta let the characters take the wheel, and that is okay because that's when the magic happens. But the outline is there to be somewhat of a roadmap that you can take a different exit if needed. And of course, lastly, be aware of the running narrative. I understand it was supposed to be a one-shot and now it's a 40-chapter fan fiction. It happens to all of us. But you know, just be careful of that running narrative because again, you don't want to lose the purpose and then suddenly you lose everybody.
Enough people didn't attend the prayer circle.
I'm just saying, exactly. All right, like that's exactly where we're at. All right, with dialogue tips. So the big difference between writing a narrative and dialogue, and this is like old school advice that I received, is that your narrative should somewhat follow more grammatical rules, but your dialogue can do whatever the heck it wants because that's how we talk. So use your slang, cut your words. Go when you did your research, if you have characters from different time periods, make them speak like they did back in that time period. Do whatever you need, do breaks. Like I'm a big fan of the what, like I love doing that. Just really practicing your character's voice. I am that person who sits in the office talking to herself to make sure that the voice sounds right. And I probably look like a fool, but it's okay because I know that the dialogue is going to sound more like dialogue and not the narrative. But of course, it is important to know your grammar rules, but this is a piece of advice that I received from Stephen King because he wrote it in his autobiography. And it is the best thing a creative writer can do is learn all the grammar rules in order to break them with purpose. So and that also goes within your narrative, but especially in your dialogue. Your dialogue should not typically sound like you're reading an informational speech. You should be sounding. Yes, you are. They are absolutely meant to be broken. So please, please, please make sure you're writing your dialogue to make it sound like the characters, to make them sound like they're actually interacting with one another.
I do have one tidbit for this one. And I read this recently. It wasn't a rule or anything, but I was reading a novel and the character said something and the words were combat boots. And it was a high fantasy novel. And the instant I read it, I was pulled out of the story and I didn't want to finish it. So break all the rules, but be mindful of your setting and where you're writing this to take place.
Right.
Because if you have a character say something or mention something that doesn't fit and it breaks that trance you just put your readers into, it's going to be really hard to get them back.
Mm-hmm. A really fun thing to do, especially if you're writing any characters that take place in different time periods, is doing research on what the slang was at the time. So I love writing Alistair, and he's from the 1920s. So I've been reading a lot of slang from the 1920s, and it's been fun to like write them. So doing that kind of stuff also as well, it just adds more immersion into your story and really gets people engaged with what you're reading. So there's my Alistair because I have to put him in at least once. So some story tips, of course, the big thing with any story is writing conflicts. If there is no conflict in your story, then why are we here? So when you're thinking about conflict, of course, conflict doesn't mean that there is a hero to villain. That it doesn't have to be that way. It can be anything from fighting the villain in the big final epic battle. It can be a personal mental health concern, like their conflict is their own personal mental health. That's what we did with our Voltron one. They can be solving a crime or they can be the one committing the crime. And of course, the most common one, because we just want to kiss that guy. That's again why we're here. But that could be your conflict. I just want to really kiss that guy. Tropes are your best friend. We're in fanfiction world. Tropes are your best friend. So sticking to your enemies to lovers, friends to lovers, your hero's journey. My favorite trope of them all. Oh no, there was only one bed. That I will read. Shockingly, I don't write it enough. I think I've only written it once, and it was recently.
I say it wasn't any of ours.
No, it wasn't with Plain. I wrote it with Solitzo, and that was the only one that I've written it, which is shocking because I've read so many. And of course, like putting in your favorite headcanons, like I love me, and Eldritch Elaster, I will write him in every single fan fiction I can put him into because it's just my favorite headcanon. So going into tropes is fine in the fan fiction world. Learn about your tropes. Some of them are fun to learn a little bit more about, and then we kind of like push the narrative on that as well. But tropes are good too. All right, I'm gonna pause here for my commercial break. I do have an advanced course tomorrow at 11:30, so if you do want to come, please come. It's in this room. And I'll also pause for questions. Any questions on writing or the writing process? Okay, great. And of course, now it's my least favorite part of writing, which is editing. But it is the most important part of the writing process. I do argue that if without editing, you don't get your story right. And editing looks different for everyone. This is the step for me that's grown the most over the past 20 years that I've been working on things. And I've changed how I've done my editing over the past few years, and I finally have found a place where I'm very happy with how I'm editing. And I'm seeing the improvements of my own writing because of how I've corrected my own style of editing. So editing is arguably the most important step of the writing process because this is how you finalize your work and you find the parts of your work that needed adjustments or fixing or how to make it better. So there are plenty of online tools to help you with editing, and this is where I'm going to be standing on my soapbox for just a hot minute. Okay, some great tools for you to use. There's some great basic spelling and grammar checks on your Word documents, your Google documents, or places where you can upload them. Using a dictionary thesaurus, that is not cheating, please use them. I will say, however, if you are using a thesaurus, please still double check the word that it recommends you, because just because it recommended the word to you does not mean that the definition actually matches what you are saying. So always double check the definition of the words it does recommend to you and make sure that it does fit your narrative. Finding some cheat sheets online. Pinterest is actually a really good place to find really fun cheat sheets of, like, instead of saying said, here's a list of 50 words you can say. Or instead of saying angry, here's a list of 50 words you can say. Pinterest has... Yeah, like, it's like they have so many of them. And I truly, like, those are some, I have printed some of those out. So, like, whenever I go back into editing, I may have written said 50 times, but let me go back and figure out a different word that I need. So those cheat sheets are actually really good. Get a beta. Betas are your best friend. They are amazing. We have had betas in France. We have had betas in England. And now my current beta lives in Georgia. So betas are amazing and they are your best friend. And we'll go over betas a little bit more. But get a beta. Betas are amazing. Using text-to-speech to listen to your fan fiction as you're editing. This is my newest tip. It's my favorite one, and it shockingly works really well. And I have found the most errors listening to my fan fiction versus me reading them in your head. Because a fun fact, when you read something that you've written, your brain starts to assume the word that should have been there that is not there. But when you have to hear it, oh, that's not going there. Let me fix that. Because that's not how she should sound. Let me fix that. That's not the word I meant to spell. Let me fix that. So listening to it is a really, really good tip that a lot of people don't think about. I use Microsoft online, their OneDrive program, and it comes with an immersive reader function. And what I do is I copy and paste the chapter I am editing into a blank one, and I listen to it while I'm editing on the original document. So I click pause, and I fix, and I fix, and I fix, and it's nice to listen to it as I'm editing it and I'm following along, and that's where I can finally see where I have my errors. So text-to-speech is actually a really good one that not a lot of people talk about. If you do ever use a tool, for the love of all that is good, please don't use AI. AI steals our creativity and puts it into a database, and then, most of our fan fictions were unfortunately part of the recent AO3 steal. Only 2 of my 44 fan fictions were not put in there. Please, AI is horrible, don't use AI. Please use other tools. And then also be mindful, because I will say that a lot of companies unfortunately are starting to put AI into their stuff. Word is one of them. So make sure that you're turning off those features and stuff if you can. I use Grammarly a lot to just check my common grammar, but even they use AI. So when I go into Grammarly and I put it in there, I only look at the first column, which is just to check my commas, spelling, and general grammar. I don't use any of their other suggestion spaces because that's all the AI and it starts to remove your voice. So if you do use programs like that, learn about them because unfortunately a lot of programs are just naturally starting to put them into their programs. So make sure that you're not losing your narrative voice when you're using these like corrective tools because they are good. Like I do like Grammarly. It checks a lot of my basic grammar functions, but I don't want to use the other 3 sections that it offers because then it starts to remove my voice.
Be careful with Grammarly when it comes to your dialogue.
Mm-hmm.
It will try and correct your dialogue and it will change it to what it considers to be correct.
Yeah.
But you might lose your character's voice in that instance.
Yeah. The good thing with Grammarly is that it lists it for you on the side and then you can click accept or deny.
Yep.
So anytime I see it's in dialogue, I go deny, 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 and then I kind of move on. And especially like when it's not used to a character's name yet.
Well,
yeah, then it tries to correct the character's name and deny. You can even tell it like ignore this forever, and then you're good to go. So some different methods of editing. Rereading your story cold and highlighting the areas that kind of stand out to you. So just reading it out loud to yourself, only highlighting the areas you want to revisit, not actually physically editing it just yet, so that then you can come back later, reread it again, and look at your highlights and actually break those little sections apart. Leaving some pieces for a few days. So I don't like to edit immediately after writing. What I typically do is I write, and then the day before I planned on posting it is finally the day that I edit it. And that way it's out of my head, it's not fresh in my mind, and it's like, oh yeah, I forgot that I wrote that. Hopefully it happens to all of you, but one day you will be reading a piece of yours and you're like, wow, who wrote that sentence? Oh wait, that was me. So hopefully that happens to you. It's the best. You're like, wow, who wrote that? Oh, me. Great. Of course, using, like I said, editor tools like we talked about. If you can get a beta, one of the good functions, especially if you use Google or Microsoft Word, is allowing them to use the editing function on those docs. Because what it does is just slashes out your stuff or leaves comment boxes, and it doesn't permanently edit your document. So then that way, when your beta is done or when you're done, you go back and accept or deny what they recommended as a change.
Yep.
So that's a good way of like getting those editing tips without you being scared that they're going to change your document. And especially with Google, and Microsoft still kind of has to work on this, but Google, when you connect your beta's email to it, you can say it has only editing permission. So it automatically goes into that editing format. And the only way that they can type on your document is to show those clear changes.
make sure if you're doing it, it's suggestion for Google.
Yeah. Of course, break apart your editing steps. So what I like to do is I edit typically at least twice. Step 1 is where I edit my story, my character flow, my character development, and just generally that aspect. And then when I feel like all of that reads right, go back, and then that's when I get my grammar, my commas, my misspelling, my things like that. That way you're not, because one of the fallbacks that tends to happen is sometimes we're like, oh man, that's a misspelled word, and then now you suddenly lost your track of flow of what you were trying to fix story-wise into that paragraph. So maybe breaking it apart and rereading it twice. I do always recommend leaving grammar and spelling for last because those tend to be a little quicker and doesn't really change your story. For some people, printing out your work and editing by hand and then going back and putting it back onto the computer works. I don't do it for fan fiction, but for our original novel I do because I'm being more nitpicky with my novel, obviously. So I prefer to hand edit our novel and then put it back into the document later. Some people are crazy and they open up a completely blank document and start to rewrite their fan fiction from scratch. Yeah, congratulations, you're insane. I don't know how you do it. I have an online friend who's like, yeah, I'm on draft number 4. I was like, my God, how?
I don't like going back. I just like,
I don't know how y'all do it. I can't do that. That's like intense. But they will literally rewrite the whole thing and look at the 2 documents and edit as they rewrite. So it is interesting. Some people do that. And of course, like I said, the text-to-speech function, that's my favorite one. I do highly recommend it. I'm also very obsessive with my fan fiction to kind of get the story right. Sometimes what I do is I just re-listen to my fan fiction using the text-to-speech while I'm washing the dishes, just to make sure that it sounds right to me. And then when I actually sit down to edit, I've like ingrained the story into my head so deeply that I'm like, now I know what I'm gonna fix. Now I know what I'm gonna add. So those are fun little things that you can do as well. Because the good thing is with the Microsoft one, you can download it onto your phone and it's an app and then you just click it. And I have friends who use it to listen to audiobook fan fictions in their car. So it's a really, and the voice, I will show it to you later. The voice actually sounds nice. It's shocking how the voice actually sounds nice. Of course, get a beta if you can, because betas are a godsend. So in case you don't know what a beta is basically an editor, but they do the work for free because they're in this fandom too, and they just really care. Most betas tend to also be writers within the community or a good friend of yours. All of our betas we've met through the fandom, like we're in the community online, and then we're like, hey, can anybody beta our stuff? And then like people volunteered for it and they offered us their free service. That's why they are the best, because it is a free service and editing takes a lot of time. So my number one tip with working with your beta is communication, and please be patient and kind with your betas. Before you even hand them a document, please have a proper communication about their boundaries and what they're comfortable reading or not. I have friends who they are open to everything and anything under the sun that I write, and then I have other friends that they're like, yeah, no, these are my boundaries, and I respect you and I love you, but I can't read this comfortably. And I go, okay, I'll see you on the next fan fiction. Like, no feelings hurt because I respect your boundaries. So please, please, please always communicate with your betas ahead of time what is comfortable for them, story-wise, and then also what is comfortable for them time-wise. I beta for some friends, and unfortunately, like, I just came back from a 2-week vacation in Miami with my parents. Absolutely no writing was done during those 2 weeks. Absolutely no betaing was done. So I had a friend who messaged me from Sweden, and she's like, hey, does the beta offer still stand? And I went, absolutely, starting on June 22nd, because that's when I'll be home and AFO will be done. So she's like, bet. So we're good. I'm gonna read her fan fiction starting on the 22nd. But it's just that, kind communication. And had she said, I want it sooner, I would have been like, well, maybe not this time around, but I'm open for any time after this date. So just be mindful. All right, any last questions on editing? Amazing. So now it's finally time to post your fan fiction. Congratulations, you did it. So your website of choice is yours. I prefer AO3. AO3 is the best. Go to AO3. AO3 is fantastic. Some people like Wattpad. I have a personal grudge with them because back in the Clans fandom days, someone stole my fan fiction and posted it there as their own, and it took a year for Wattpad to delete it. So I hate Wattpad. They can burn. So yes. I have not tried that one. I need to try. I really have been stuck on AO3 since 2017, and I haven't looked back.
We got a lot of X. Reader X, everyone.
Oh, amazing. Okay, so I might have to check it out. But yes, so here we are. Of course, learn what the process of posting in those websites are, because every website can look different.
Just wanted to add on the Wattpad headstring that they can take your stuff and make it with, and if they can license your work, and then you don't get anything out of it.
Yes, even worse. I hate them.
Wattpad also had an incident where it got breached forever ago, because I used to cross post on AO3 and Wattpad for a while, but after that happened, because my account got hit, and I made it when I was a teenager, and it had my personal email, so I had to completely wipe it.
Yeah, see, they're horrible. So AO3 is great. Highly recommend Archive of Our Own. They're amazing. And even when the breach happened with the scraping for AI stuff, AO3 was on top of it as quickly as possible, trying to get all that stuff and starting lawsuits and things like that. So when I say you can trust AO3, I have been with them since 2017, and they've done me no wrong. But like I said, learn the process of how those websites post, because of course, depending on what their formatting is and how it looks, depends on how you're going to put stuff onto the website. You might have to learn a little bit about coding or HTML, depending on how you want to make your fan fiction look pretty. I will say it's pretty easy on AO3 because they do offer the rich text version. What I like to do a lot for my author notes and stuff is I will write it in the rich comment, make it all pretty and bold, and then click HTML, and look, it coded it for me, copy paste. So that's my fun trick with AO3. But yeah, sometimes you might have to learn some things because you want to make it look nice. You also have to create your summary. I highly recommend you do your summary like you did with your stories. Write it, edit it, and then post it into your fanfiction, because the last thing you want is a horribly written summary that gets no one's attention, even though you have a masterpiece waiting in the chapters. So make sure that your summary is also working. Now, a little message about tagging. All right, so this is where I'm gonna, again, get on my soapbox. Tagging is vastly important, especially in the fan fiction world. Tagging is so important, it's now starting to enter the publishing world. A lot of publishers are starting to put trigger warnings and content warnings in their novels. That's how important this is. When it comes to tagging, I like to separate them into two categories. One is content warning and the other one is trigger warning, and there is a difference between the two of them. Yes, so content warning is just literally warning the reader what the content of the story is. So it's a fantasy, that is a content warning. It is an enemies to lovers. It is a modern AU. It is an angelic Lucifer. It is an alien Keith. There might be smut in it. It has fluff, it has angst. Those are content warnings. Just generally giving you a little bit of context of what you're gonna read in the story. The reason why it's important to put good content warnings into your tags is because this is how the readers find you. Sometimes your content warning will give the reader more information of what they're looking for versus your summary. So using your content warnings very mindfully can actually help get you readers. I've heard things like, oh yeah, I saw that you wrote this content warning in your tags, and that's actually the reason why I clicked your fan fiction. I was like, perfect. Because my summary is gonna give you a summary, but then like my content warnings might give you a little insight of some of the things that's happening later on. Then you have your trigger warnings, and your trigger warnings are what might actually potentially trigger another person from reading your story. And these are very important because we are in a safe space. Fandom should be a safe space. So we want to make sure that our readers feel that they're safe within our hands. So if you're going to write very harsh topics, which you should, there is no reason why you shouldn't write anything that comes to your mind. However, if this person unfortunately has a real life trauma event that they avoid fan fictions with that, they're gonna want those trigger warnings to make sure that they don't read your fan fiction. I have an online friend right now that there's one thing she does not like to read. It's triggering for her, and she tells me all the time, she goes, I am so sorry, I'm not gonna be able to read this thing because you told me that. And I was like, girl, it's fine. I'm not offended because it's your trigger. I'll see you in the next fan fiction where I know your trigger is not present. I cannot be offended by something that triggers you just because you can't read it. It's fine. That's why I put those warnings up there for you. So please make sure to do your trigger warnings as well. Some of the common ones that you'll see is hurt comfort, sad ending. That's a big one that a lot of people tend to miss. If you're going to have a sad or bittersweet ending, a lot of the readers actually want to know in advance that it's not going to be happy. You don't have to say why. You can just write sad, bittersweet ending, but at least that lets them know that it's happening. Major character death, that's a big one that a lot of readers want to know. On my current big fan fiction that I'm writing right now, I did use the AO3 tag that says I have a major character death, but then in the tags I wrote down major character death, not one of the main characters. So that's why people kept coming in, because they knew, okay, it's not Alistair or Lucifer, we're fine. I was like, great, please come in. Someone will die, but it's not them. So that way they can still choose to come into the fan fiction. So you can also correct your tags as well if needed. Does anybody here know what the term dead dove means? Thank you. Dead dove is a very important one. That is where it's like explicit, very, very, very adult, and very, very triggering for a lot of people. So dead dove is a very, very big one as well. And typically the correct way to actually write a dead dove tag is to write the words dead dove : and then put the thing that is the dead dove next to it. Because dead dove itself is not a tag. Because that is a common misunderstanding.
Because it's supposed to just dead dove not eat, and then just the rest of the trigger warnings.
Yeah, what I typically do is I write dead dove and then everything that's dead dove right next to it.
Yeah, that's fine, by the way, actually.
Of course, any form of self-harm or essay is also considered trigger warnings. These are things you definitely want to put out there for people.
Also, just note in the chapters, when you update and add tags, make sure people know that you have updated and added
Yes,
tag.
yes. One of the things I will do too, especially like especially with fan fiction that like I might have a little bit of smut in it, but it's like one chapter out of 40. I will put in my author's notes, this is the smut chapter. Please skip it if you don't want. Continue. Yes, please.
I'm desperate to avoid it.
Yes.
No, I was gonna say I do the same thing, where it's like, especially if it's a multi-chapter, and I'm going, I don't wanna spoil like every single thing.
Yep.
But when it gets to it, I go to the author's notes because they have the lovely with additional warnings and author notes. I'm like, hey, this chapter has X, Y, Z, especially if it's something repeated. It's like a repeated trigger, but it doesn't happen in every chapter. I'm like, hey, by the way, this is meant to be done.
Yeah, and like right now I'm releasing an anthology story. So like in every chapter, it's technically its own individual one-shot. So what I've been doing with the tags is putting like chapter 1, chapter 2, so already in the tags, you already have that kind of listed in there. Anyone else?
You might address this in a different slide, but for the different like ratings, like
teen.
That's
mature.
coming up.
Okay, cool.
All right, so as you can see, these are my tags. These are my tags for my main fan fiction. I cannot stress how long these tags are. Fun fact, there is an 80 tag cap. I've met it. Yeah, my favorite tag in here is the last one that says, please, please trust the process. Because it is a very angsty fan fiction, and everybody's like, you're gonna make them all die, aren't you? That's how it's reading. I'm like, no guys, I swear it's a happy ending. I swear you're gonna get there. So I wrote, please, please, please trust the process. But yes, I put, and if you were to look in there, you would see what is trigger warnings and what is content warnings. So like a content warning that I put in there, it's a slow burn. We're on 22 chapters and they're still not together. It's a slow burn. But then I also have content warnings like cannibalism, because Alistair. So like you have everything kind of mixed in there, all right? So that's how my tag looks for my main fan fiction. One of the big things that I will say, because I have sadly heard this argument, and I hate this argument with all of my being, attempting to avoid a spoiler is not worth triggering someone.
It's the worst argument.
It is. I've literally had people try to argue, but if I put that tag, it spoils something. I was like, no, put the tag.
Spoil it.
Put the tag. You don't have to put down who dies, but you're gonna put down that someone dies, like, or someone's about to get hurt. Like, please, for the love of all that is good, just because it might spoil your fan fiction, it still needs to have a tag, especially if it's a trigger warning. I can understand maybe a content warning, but a trigger warning, absolutely, you should be putting those. And especially as you're writing and a trigger comes up later, just update your tags. AO3 has a lovely just edit tag button where you only have to edit the tags. Update your tags, especially as you're writing. And if you see that kind of like a new trigger might be coming your way. And also it does happen sometimes where you didn't even think that something was a trigger, and someone very kindly tells you in the comments, hey, I don't think you knew that this was a trigger. Can you consider putting it down? I typically write down like, oh man, I am so sorry. I didn't think that was a trigger. Absolutely, I will go update it, and then I add it into my tags. Some final notes. If you do have a beta, please credit them. I don't see it enough in fan fiction where you credit your betas. You know, they put in all this hard work for us to edit our pieces, credit them. So I always put down, thank you to my beta, she has an AO3. I put the tag on the AO3 and it takes you to their work, and now you can read their work too. So credit your betas, please, if you can. Also use your author's notes, beginning and ending, to give your readers any kind of updates. For example, I have a tendency of trying to update bi-weekly, but unfortunately, well, not unfortunately, fortunately, I was finishing my graduate program, and I was like, guys, I don't think I'm gonna finish writing this fan fiction. I'm trying to graduate with my master's. So they're like, yeah, it's chill, you're good. I was like, great. So I would put it down in the author's notes. Might not see you for a month, but find me on Blue Sky and you'll get the updates, because I always update on Blue Sky. Huh?
Those are the funniest authors.
Those are the best ones. My favorite.
I love them.
You know it's going to be a good fan fiction when it says, English is not my first language. Oh, that's going to be the best fan fiction ever. Thank you, you're the best. Another thing, a good thing to do with your editor's notes, if you can figure out how to put links to your social media, do it. AO3, you're not allowed to advertise anything that you're selling because it is a free program, and if you do, they will suspend you. I learned the hard way. So the best thing to do is just be like, hey guys, check me out on my socials, and then from there you can start selling your stuff. So, you know, that's a good place to put all of that things as well. Ratings, choose your ratings wisely, please. Ratings are very, very, very important. And this, what I put in the parentheses is how I view it when I'm choosing my rating. So if I choose general audiences, my 5-year-old can read it. All right, I can read this to my 5-year-old like a bedtime story, we're good to go. Teen, my high school students can read it because I work in a high school. So if I feel comfortable sharing this fic with my high school students, great, that's what I would give them. Mature, I would only give this to an adult. There are some mature themes. Might have a few triggers, but nothing too deep. I'm kind of keeping it in a level playing field. And then explicit is anything that is too heavy. The second you put dead dove as a tag, you're explicit, period. All right, it says dead dove, you're explicit, we're done. If it's smut, we're explicit, it's to finish. Please, this is not an argument. Like, this is what it needs to be. So this is kind of like how I view it anytime I'm picking my my ratings. I think that's like a good general way to kind of view it. Some other final notes. When you do start posting and you're impatiently waiting for that lovely first comment, try not to become obsessed with them. One of the last things you want is to kind of put yourself in a mind space where you're writing for the purpose of your hit counts, your comments, and your kudos. Eventually, hopefully you start to, gain a little bit of popularity, or people start to wanting to come back for your stories, especially if you're in a bigger fandom, like that tends to happen a little quicker. But the last thing you want to do is become obsessed with that, because then at that point you're going to stop writing for the reasons why you started writing fan fiction in the first place. If you do start getting known a little bit, be very mindful. Again, this is a happy community. We should be safe with one another, and we should be thriving and pushing for others. So just be very grateful and pushing others and saying, thank you for your comment. I really appreciate this. Like, just being nice to the people who take their time to read the thing that you put out for free. And I will say, unfortunately, this has been happening a lot lately. There are some sad bots and troll bots out there that are purposefully putting out negative feedback and comments on fan fiction. I have spoken to a lot of brand new fan fiction authors who they posted their first fan fiction ever, and the first thing that happened within 10 minutes was one of those troll bots telling them that they were one of the worst writers they've ever read. And had it not been for me being on social media saying, don't listen to them, if you ever get that negative, hit me on the DMs, these people would have quit writing because of those. And then luckily, a few hours later, they got their first positive. And I was like, you have to understand that this is something that is happening, unfortunately. Do not listen to those negative comments. There are places in AO3 where you can monitor your comments, and you as the author can delete any comment that was sent to you. So I would just delete it and move on, because unfortunately there is a rise of these troll bots going out there and literally telling you that your fan fiction is trash. It is not, they are trash. Please move on from those comments. If people love your story, some people might start drawing you art, or if you want to make your story pretty, commission an artist and get some art. And there are ways to embed that art into your fan fiction. I will go a little bit more into detail of this in the advanced course. But there are ways for you to put art inside of your fan fictions as well. Your fan fiction is also a great stepping stone into the general community of your fandom. When I joined the Has-Been community, I literally did not speak to a soul until the day I posted my first fan fiction, and now it's been a 1-year ride, and it's been crazy. I have been very fortunate enough to have been accepted into a zine. I am part of a massive project that is being released in August. This week I've been releasing a collaborative work where I literally just said, hey, who wants to collab with me? And 5 artists jumped to collab with me. And it was really great. And it's just because me posting that fan fiction gave me the stepping stone into the overall bigger community. And I got to interact with a lot of people that I've gotten to know with throughout the last year, and it's been fantastic. Last but not least, and probably the most important part of all, fan fiction writing is about expressing your love for your favorite characters and fandom. So don't forget to have fun. The only one who you should be pleasing is yourself. You should be writing stories that you want to read. The biggest pain any writer goes through is like, man, I really want to read this story. I guess I gotta write it. So that's like my biggest piece of advice is at the end of the day, we are doing this for free. None of us are earning a profit from it. I can go on a whole tangent on why we legally can't. That's next year's panel, hopefully. Next year I will have a panel of the history of fanfiction. So that's like my goal. I literally am very excited about it because the Omegaverse lawsuit is one of my favorite topics to discuss. It is the best. That and Anne Rice. She can, yeah. So happy that she's no longer caring about her property because she's not here. So, because Interview with the Vampire is back. I have my words, all right? She's the reason why we can't sell anything.
Isn't her son like super fun in the fit? He just lost stuff that's like a totally opposite of
Yes.
I love that.
It's the best. So with that said, here are our handles once again. Please follow us on socials if you can. One more time, I will be here tomorrow at 11:30. If you do come to our advanced course, I'll be talking about how to improve your world building, how to improve your overall writing skills. I have some really good AO3 resources on how to make things look pretty and give you some cheat sheet HTML stuff, which is great. I will show you how to make all of my beautiful book covers. Canva is your best friend in case you can't make it. Canva. This whole PowerPoint was Canva. Like, Canva's the best. So if you can come and join us again tomorrow, because I will be going a little bit more in depth into that kind of stuff. So now the floor is open for questions.
Just general befriending favorite fanfic writers. I did. Now I have access to like 2 of them unpublished fics, so I can read them for anyone else.
Heck yeah, that's always the best part.
I helped make these 2 fics.
Heck yeah. Oh yeah,
That's great. I love it.
the
Favorite
thing,
thing ever.
the thing that I got into, it's called Radio Apple A to Z. It's 26 authors that have been chosen, and each of us take a letter. I'm L for lonely. So for the last 3 months, we've all been working on our fan fiction, and only the 26 of us know what each other is writing, which is great.
I'm also in one of my favorite fanfics as a character.
Heck.
I'm in there.
Heck yeah. We've written ourselves a story. It's fun.
Yeah.
This may be more of an opinion question than a tip question, but what are your thoughts on listing all of the relationships in a fan fiction outside of like the main one? Like you
Do
read,
it.
Do it.
yeah.
Do it. If at
People
any,
like the grandparent are gonna love you.
yeah, like, especially like if it at any point in time becomes important in the story, do it. So like,
Lion's Chain.
I'm trying. Yeah, I was like, which story? Like Lion's Chains. Like our main characters are Keith and Lance, but we make them go through like dating other people. So all of them are listed. Like until it is like this is endgame, but they're gonna date other people before we get there. I also will list background characters that you know you're gonna get a lot more of. My main fan fiction, Biting into Apples and Blood, is actually a series. I call it the Garden of Eden series, and each story in the series is a different ship. And within it, I hint all the other ships in the main fan fiction. So I list, and when you look up the series page, you see all the ships from that series listed there. So that you know, like, hey, you like Still Lit So Great, you're still gonna deal with Radio Apple, you better be ready for that. That's in there. So, yeah, good question. Anybody else?
I think another one over there. Question? No question? Question.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on writing one long fic versus like several fics in one series?
I think it just depends on where your story is going. So, for example, Lion's Chains that we wrote many odd years ago, that one was a very long fan fiction. It ended up being 42 chapters long, but then we ended up creating a sequel that was another 47 chapters long. So sometimes it's fine because the story did work. But
My
then yeah. But then we have other stories that it's like, it's gonna be 10 chapters and that's it. It doesn't need to go further. So I really just do think that when you are plotting, it's all about getting the context of the plot involved. Like one of the questions I get a lot is, how many chapters is this fan fiction gonna be? And I go, I know what the story is gonna do from beginning to end. I know how many, I was like, I thought this chapter was gonna happen in chapter 12 and here we are in chapter 18. So I think it just depends. As long as you feel that the flow of the story is working, you're good. And to kind of speak on that too, there is no minimum or maximum per chapter. Because some people are like, if a chapter's not 5,000 words, I'm not gonna read it. Who cares?
This is an actual question. How do you keep it with pacing as a short story writer to trying to be a novel author, just a lot longer projects?
Plotting ahead of time. I literally can't.
Motivation?
Like motivation and plotting ahead of time. One of the biggest things that for me when I'm writing long form is that before I even put chapter 1 on my paper, if I don't know what my beginning, middle, and end is ahead of time, I'm not writing it. Because then I know I'm gonna lose it when I'm trying to write it long form. So like my current one that I'm posting is currently 21 chapters long. I am now what I consider 50% done with the fan fiction. So I'm predicting it's gonna be somewhere in the 40s to 50s. How many it's going to be, I cannot tell you because again, that's the part I never plan out. But then with a one shot, I just know that it's a little quicker and I can kind of go at it and throw it. I've written one shots that are as short as just 2,500 words. Those are a little quicker. It doesn't need too much of my pacing, too much of my time. And it also kind of depends on how much you care for the fan fiction too. Like I've written some throwaway fan fiction and I'm like, this is just because I had an idea and I wrote it in a day and I beta checked it and blah. And then my long fan fictions, I'm like, I'm obsessed with these and I will not give it to you until it is perfect. So yeah, that happens too.
So you mentioned that you're writing like a novel, an original novel. Have you experienced any like, I guess culture shock almost in going from writing specifically for fan fiction to novel writing?
So much. I don't know what it is about fan fiction that I can write 300,000 words with ease. And then in my original novel, I was like, how am I only at 75,000 words? It happens. I don't know what it is. But I think it has to do with the fact that like fan fiction is a toy box, so you're just playing with other people's characters. And then in an original novel, you're doing it everything from scratch. In the other panel we're gonna do, I have a whole like 2 or 3 slides about world building. And a lot of that advice comes from our original novel because we have to build everything from scratch. We have to be like, hey, What is the language of this world? What happens when this happens here? All that stuff. Oh, we're running out of time. All right. So yeah. So if you come to my next one, I will absolutely give it. If not, I will say this: we've been recording this whole thing the whole time. We will be on YouTube. We post all of our fan fiction panels up on YouTube under Luna Vulpes. You can actually find our old 2018 one when we did it at AFO in 2018. And that was a 2-hour panel, so that's a nice long one. So again, if you need anything, we'll also step outside if you have any further questions. I really appreciate it, you guys. It's been nice, so thank you.